Okay. Alrighty, let's do this. Alright, I went and I rearranged my camera a little bit today, so that's a little better. You can see, for the most part, where he all is now. And I evened out his nose, so it's a little more even on both sides. I evened out his cheeks a little bit, so they both came around a bit. This one got sharp. So it's not too bad. Again, you're not going to have it totally symmetrical on both sides, no matter what you do. So you want to minimize it, but you don't want to have to stress over it either. So now I got to finish sculpting it around the eyes and the forehead, and then I can finish letting him soak and dry out and stuff. Now with this batting on here, one thing I didn't think about, which is it's not a horrible thing or anything, but I didn't think that it was going to be absorbing the water. So it is absorbing the water from this paper mache stuff, the Sculptamold, and that's fine because what it's doing is leaving it a little bit. Well, it's still hard on the top. It's leaving it a little bit damp that you can come in and work on it for a couple of days. And even when it's dry like that, if you take a little bit of water on your fingers and start going over it, you're going to see it's going to get a little bit wetter and fill in and smooth out a little bit. And that I really do like that. And then if that doesn't work, you can take a small piece of mold of the Sculptamold stuff wet and get it a little bit wetter even and put it on there. And now I'm just sort of putting like a skim coat over it, and it fills in all those places and smooths it out really nicely. And if I want it even smoother, like I said, I can sand it. I just don't like handling these after they get dried. After they're dry, I want to paint them and move on and get them mounted on how they're going to be worn on the actors and things like that. I don't want to deal with all this other funky stuff. So that's all there is to that song and dance. But you can see, and then if you got a little piece like that, either you use it or you get rid of it. If it doesn't want to mesh in there, it's just get rid of it. See, and then when you're doing this too, you can see if there's any little pockets that you want to deal with or get rid of or take care of it. So you can see, and you can see it's pretty smooth. Even in the places where it's a little rough, it's not bad. And I mean, I have no problem painting over that, and the paint's going to help smooth it out a bit too. So now I'm going to pull this down to me a bit, and let me see how I can do this with this thing here. And let's put it back here. Sorry about that. I think it should be okay. Here we go. And, well, it is what it is, and that's all that it is. Anyway, I want to use this before it gets too dry. This is a little bit thicker than what I've been mixing it, so I might have to put my water in with this because this is drying pretty fast today in the bucket. Not in the other stuff, but in the bucket it is. So I'm going to add a little more water to it and mix it up a bit better and see where it goes from there. And gosh, that's been a little bit weird. Alright, well, it's a colder day than it has been for a while, so, and I need to, alright, so I'm going to do this other spot right up here, and I'll work a little bit quicker, and again, I got these edited and put on YouTube, but I'll probably go back in and re-edit them and fast forward in some spots, so you don't have to listen to me quite so much, and, part of it is just working with the stuff and learning how it works and dealing with it and making it do what you want it to do. And I can tell you until I'm blue in the face, but until you start working with it yourself, it's never going to make any sense to you. So, I can do and I can show, but I hope that what I tell you makes sense. But after that, it's up to you. And again, I went and I got started watching these videos, and The Ultimate Paper Mache, and there's another one. I'd have to look up the name of it. I forget. She's really good. And then this other guy does the dragons and the mythological creatures, and he does wild stuff. It is so cool. And they use a proper paper mache, and they tell you how to do it and stuff. But since I was able to get the Sculpt-A-Mold on sale, and I figured the way I like to work, it made more sense for me. Now, technically, you could do the bottom part here, and then paper mache over it with regular paper mache. It's going to do the same thing, but I would say you're going to want to do it small paper pieces of paper, or you can, again, you can do it like you do paper pulp, where you go and you mash it all up and let it sit, and you cook it. You take the newspaper and you cook it. Basically, you tear it up into small pieces, and then you sort of cook it and let it sort of unbind itself. And then you can go and, just like when you do making paper and you're making paper pulp, then you can use that paper pulp with the paper mache formula, whether you're using wallpaper paste or if you're using the wheat flour or whatever you want to do. And you can actually make it into something very similar to what I'm using right here and stuff, but sometimes I just don't like experimenting with all my materials and mediums if I know there's something that I can use that's going to work, and I got time, and I don't have the time to fiddle with stuff. It's time to just sit down and do the work sometimes. And you know, there's some times where I'll sit there and I will do all that backup stuff and make my own materials and get that all taken care of and stuff. But sometimes too, the actual getting all that stuff all together and getting it actually working takes up more time than you really need to be doing. You know, and that's one of the things too that the students really do not understand, is how much time it takes to get your materials prepped together or made before you can even do your art process. And so it's still pretty light, so that's good. I want to put this on there. You can see I put a peak wad there because there was sort of a hole there. I wasn't liking that hole. I wanted it smooth like over there, but it sort of got my depression in there, so I want to get that in there. See, now it's looking pretty good there. And you know, so they don't like the prep work sometimes that is necessary to get to the part that, the actual art part where you're constructing it and stuff. But if you like doing the prep part and you're interested in that part too, where you go and start totally from scratch and you make your materials and then you go in and put them together and make it art, you start looking in, and the best thing to do for that is hit rummage sales or old auctions and stuff, and start looking for the old craft books from before the 50s and before, because they went, and the way the world was then, they didn't have the access to Hobby Lobbies and Michaels and Joann Fabrics and the different craft stores, or emailing it on Amazon or looking it up online and stuff, and they would have to do that work or make what they needed first, and you go and they actually give you the directions in there to make what you need before you do your other stuff. So if you were, for instance, there's backstrap weaving, which takes really small pieces of wood right there, and you drill them and you put them together, and you know, anyway, it's a weaving loom. It's a small weaving loom, and I actually have a book from the 50s that tells you how to make that little loom with the little pieces of wood and where to drill and stuff, and you can use popsicle sticks for it. So, you know, and that makes it so much cheaper and easier to use rather than having to go out and buy everything. So I got this going, and the only problem with this stuff is once it starts making up and getting made up, you don't want to let it get too hard because it will go and it gets a little funky. It gets grainy. It feels real weird when it gets to this one consistency, and then you got pieces that's trying to dry on you, and it's weird. So now I get to do this side too, and I thought it was pretty good until I figured it filled it in up here. That's the words I was thinking. Sorry. And so, and there we go there. And there we go there. And yeah, that looks pretty even there. And you can see I need some stuff over here now. Oops. Let's get you down here a bit more. I'm not sure if you've seen all that stuff. When I go through this, I'm going to be all upset now. Or you're going to end up with a bunch deleted out because you can't see what I was just doing. Because again, I just moved it. So you can see this stuff here is really a lot more crumbly. But if I go like this, it's getting in there. And I wanted to do it drier because that's what I need to do for this inside of this so it doesn't go everywhere, which it's doing right now. So, and right here, which means lots of water on my fingers and hands. This is really, hard. All the water on your hands and stuff is really hard in the winter. Luckily, it's not quite so bad in the summer, but when you got, it's like with clay, you go and your hands take a beating sometimes when you're doing sculpture a lot and stuff. Especially when you get stuff that'll dry them out a lot and things. So now I get to go in here and get that in there. And probably the hardest part of doing this is right around the edges here and get it covered and yet make it look great. So I'll try to do those sort of last, but sometimes you gotta sort of do them as you go. So get a little bit done and then go back and do that part and then go back in and just, and you can see it does stick in there, and I am trying to make it look really much like the lid going in there. So I want it to go behind there a little bit. Even with the masking tape, I can push it back a bit. So, oops, let's go back here. Since it wants to do that, we're going to do that. And there we go there. See, it's beginning to behave itself. And sometimes you can see when I'm doing this, it sort of brings the paper clay up around here and in there sometimes. And that's sort of gotten hard enough that it doesn't want to do what we want it to do. Oh my goodness. This is just soaking up water today. It's been raining and stuff, so I would have thought that it would have been a little bit more malleable. I don't know. It could be too. I went and I know it said use cold water, and I used a little bit more lukewarm water this today because it was so cold and I didn't want my fingers getting really cold and stuff, and it does not work as well with the lukewarm water even. I mean, I thought it wouldn't be that warm enough to really make a difference, and it does seem to be making a difference. So it could be a bunch of combinations of things. And just be aware of that type of stuff. But you can see, okay, there we go. Ah, you can see underneath there, wrong side, sorry. This is opposite. So I got this all done up here. And then over this top, oh, there's a piece right there that's missing. So I'm going to take a piece here and just sort of smush it on there. And see, I got support underneath it as well a little bit. And I gotta be careful not to smush up the parts that I like while I'm fixing the parts that are being a little tricky-ish. And edges are tricky. They're so tricky. There we go. And sometimes I'll do it the best I can, let it dry, and then go back in over it, because then you have you've got that little piece there in the front edge that still isn't covered, but the rest of it is, and when it's dry, you can just go right in there and do what you need to. Ouch, there we go. Wow, that's pretty solid. All right, so let me see. Here we go again. I'm going to try to do the same thing to the other eye. And this is sort of interesting because I never pay attention to how long things take me to make and work on. And people are like, well, how long does it take them? I don't know, a day or two or whatever. And with doing the tapes, it's sort of, it does tell you how long it took you. So, I mean, I've gotten a lot faster than when I first started doing this. And I was doing 3 lionesses at a time and stuff, because it just made sense to do that. My arm is hurting and it's at the wrong angle, so I'm going to try turning this so you can still see it and see what I'm doing, and yet my shoulder's in a better place. I don't know what I did to my shoulder, but that's life. Anyway, smash you in there a little bit better. And down you go. Because it does not like me on this side at all. This is really doing weird stuff to me, for me. But it's almost gone anyway on this piece, so I'm going to see what I got. And if I can add a little bit more water to it over here. So that's what I'm doing over here, is playing with this paper clay here. And I'm hoping to get the whole eye side done on both sides, and I have just enough to do that if it behaves itself. The clay, or paper mache, or whatever we're calling the silly stuff. And there we go, and there we go. Oops, now I got more clay cardboard showing underneath there, and a little bit showing up there, which I don't want, so. And see if I can push it back over. And just a little bitty piece there to cover that part. So. And the other ones went a lot faster because there was a little bit less sculpting to do. The lionesses are simpler. You know, Mufasa and Simba are probably, and Scar, are the 3 that really need to be accurate and stuff, but, or be the way you need them to be, I guess you want to say. So you don't mess with those too much, but those are the ones you're going to spend more time on to make sure they're going to do what you want it to do. So, and you can see the bumps in there. I think you can see them. I don't know, white on white, you might not. But there's a little bump here and stuff because it is sticking. You can see it staying on there. It's not like it was yesterday where I had it so thin that I could just pat it and it went everywhere. This stuff here, so you can vary the thickness of your clay depending on what you're sculpting and how you're sculpting it. So like when I'm doing the bases, I do it with a lot thinner, and then I do a little bit thicker for when I start doing the pieces that are sticking up and the corners and the edges and the more sculptural things. But You also don't want it to be quite as hard as it is today. So usually. So we're going to go, and I have a piece right here, and I'm going to turn this around and check these eyes again and see where we're going. Right now, see, I'm doing this right here at the corner and then the edge, because again, now they are going to have headdresses and such, and the lions, they have their manes, and I'm hoping to use some raffia and things like that that'll end up looking similar to the musical ideas and stuff, but not exactly the same. And to do it cheaply, I was going to go down to the card factory, the nearest card factory, which is a 2-hour drive from me because I live in Northwoods where there is nothing. But I'm going to go down there and pick up some of the raffia hula skirts for children at like a party store, and then I'm going to cut it apart and use that for the manes and stuff and shape those the way I want them to be and such things. So I am debating on how I want this to be. Maybe. Alright, so we want those. And I do like that part where it's done that. So now, where did I put that thing? I did have, oh, there it is. I also have a clay tool I've been using for stone spots. And you can see as this clay tool, you got this pointy edge that goes that way, and that edge is a little thicker. So I can go in there, see, and really get in there and use this. So if you're good at using clay tools, you can use that for many, many, many pieces. You want to make sure it's cleaned off, and I would not, if it doesn't clean off as, if you still have these little white pieces on it, I would not use it for clay again. I would keep it simply for this stuff, because you don't want this stuff getting mixed up in with your clay stuff. It will have very bad things when you go to fire it, and it does bad things. Like, you know, it puts holes in the clay on the inside, and it could explode in the kiln. So it's not as bad as plaster, but it's not, I would think it probably has some of the similar properties where when it dries, or if you get pieces inside the clay and a clay wall and it dries, you're going to end up with this stuff burning off because it has a paper base, and then leaving a hole behind which will explode. And that would be that, you know, lovely thing. It's amazing all you have to learn as an art teacher. I didn't know that before I became an art teacher, really. I never thought about it until I had to worry about, you know, getting stuff in the kiln and how to fire all that and everything else. So it makes life interesting. So So you can see what I'm doing here for this. And so you've gotten the idea. This is the way it's going. So I'm just going to finish them up and stuff. But you can see that that way. Okay. We're going to have a Simba mask done here in another 5-10 minutes. And it's going to look pretty darn good. So you can see his eyes and stuff from this angle, and his nose is pretty good. And same with his cheeks. This one sticks out a little bit more than this one does, but you know, once I paint it, it's not going to be quite as noticeable, I don't think. Or I'll just bring this one out a little bit more too. So I'm just going to finish off these eyes on the inside and stuff, and then get that going so I can paint these tomorrow probably. And I have a lot of cleanup and stuff to do for school starting, so that is it for my Simba mask until I get to the painting part.